Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you so much for doing this. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of our Tech for Good series discussions, where we interview experts and commentators cutting across the technology space. And today we have a very special guest, I would say, a very, very special guest, Anne Cavoukian, who has been the architect of the concept of privacy by design. Privacy by design is a concept which is now a foundational aspect of data protection regulations across the world. GDPR talks about it. The Indian Data Protection Bill talks about it. And privacy by design is something which is a foundational aspect for driving and for implementing data protection regulations, which will protect user data on the online space. Just to sort of give a brief introduction about Anne, she is a former Information and Privacy Commissioner for the Canadian province of Ontario. Since 2017, she has been working as a distinguished expert in residence at Ryerson University's Privacy by Design Center of Excellence. And we can literally spend an entire day just talking about her work and achievements in the privacy ecosystem. But we don't have a day's time, we have half an hour. So we'll quickly jump into the question and answer session with Anne. And Anne, thank you so much for coming in and for doing this with us. You have a lovely background. With so many.
This is where I work. Thank you so much, Kazim, for inviting me to join you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I don't have as rich background as you have. That also speaks volumes of the intellectual prowess that you have. And we are really inspired to talk to you today. And my first question to you is, you're not just an achiever, but with designations and honors, but your work is also very inspiring. So tell us a little bit about your personal journey. What inspired you to work so zealously in the privacy domain, and what drives you?
Okay, well then I'll give you a bigger answer in terms of my background, because that's what drives me. I'm Armenian. My brilliant parents and grandparents enabled me to be here now. And I'm just going to give you a little story of why freedom is so important to me. My grandparents were in the Armenian genocide. They were scheduled to be killed the next morning. They're in prison. This is my grandmother telling me the story. And my grandfather is thinking, what can I do to save my family? He has 3 children, and my father was his youngest. He was 3 years old with them in the prison at that time. So my grandfather was an artist, a brilliant artist. But so what, right? A painter, big deal, right? How can that save people's lives? Here's what he did. My grandma told me that she always carried parchment paper and charcoal with her because my grandfather loved to etch things all the time. And that morning, my grandfather saw General Pasha, the head of the Turkish delegation. And that evening in the prison, Grandma lit a candle and my grandfather etched from memory a portrait of the general, thinking who knows what, but that's all he knows how to do. In the morning, they're being let off to be killed. My grandfather rolls up the parchment paper, gives it to the soldier who's taking them out and says, please give this to General Pasha with my regards. And the soldier says, stupid man, what's he gonna wanna do with this? Forget it. So my grandfather thinks, okay, that's it, we're gonna die today. Within minutes of them being killed, General Pasha comes riding in on horseback, waving the parchment paper, and he says, who did this? I wanna know who did this. And my grandfather says, Efendi, sir, in Turkish, I did it. The general says, I like it very much. You and your family, you're free to go. That's what freed my family. I wouldn't be here talking to you today. And then they did a number of things to pursue freedom. The reason I'm telling this story, 2 reasons. One, you never give up. You never give up on freedom, no matter how low the odds may be in this day and age of massive surveillance. You never give up on privacy, which forms the foundation of our freedom. And I always want to give people hope that there's always a way, a parallel way that will in fact strengthen our privacy. So it's a long story. That's what guides everything I do. And when I was privacy commissioner many years ago, I was privacy commissioner for 3 terms, 17 years. When I became commissioner, I brought a very different approach to it from all my legal staff at the commission because I'm a psychologist. That's my background. I studied psychology and the law. So when I came on, I wanted to offer something other than regulatory compliance laws after the data breach or privacy infraction has taken place. I wanted a model of prevention. How do you prevent the privacy harms from arising, much like a medical model of prevention. So I came up with Privacy by Design. Literally over 3 nights at my kitchen table at home, I developed the 7 foundational principles. And I presented this to my legal staff. And it took a little bit of doing, but then it cottoned on. So that you can do both. You can try to prevent the privacy harms from arising, bake it into the code, all the privacy protective measures. And you can also have privacy laws that kick in afterwards. Both methods will give you the strongest form of privacy protection possible. That's what I wanted.
Thank you. And in fact, my second question to you is on the privacy by design concept. What was the sort of inspiration behind this, and how eager, and we are seeing this concept now becoming global, right? I mean, in India is looking at it, GDPR has done it. How important is this concept to enable user privacy?
I think it's very important, obviously, but that view is shared by many countries. It's been translated into 40 languages, and the essence of privacy by design. And again, I have a tech background, and so to me, embedding privacy protective measures directly into one's operations so you can prevent the privacy harms from arising, bake it into the code, into your design so that it's seamlessly present. It can't be forgotten. It's always a part of the code you're developing. So that to me was critical, because in this day and age, we can't just address things after the privacy harms have arisen. In fact, in 2010, I was commissioner, and once a year privacy commissioners have a privacy and data protection conference, usually in Europe. In 2010, it was in Jerusalem. And at the end of a 3 or 4 day session, we have a half-day closed session where commissioners are invited to bring forward resolutions that the entire Assembly of Commissioners vote on. And I introduced the resolution in 2010 that our privacy laws should be complemented with privacy by design, which is proactive and tries to prevent the privacy harms from arising. And I didn't know how it would take with all the commissioners, because most of the commissioners are brilliant, what I call lawyers. But it was unanimously passed. They voted in favor of privacy by design complementing regulatory compliance through privacy laws. And afterwards, I went around thanking all the commissioners and expressing my surprise that lawyers would be so supportive of privacy protective measures proactively. And they all said the same thing. They said, Anne, in this day and age of massive social media and everyone connecting online, we cannot just have privacy laws after the fact. We would just be addressing the tip of the iceberg by doing that. We need to have privacy protective measures embedded into the design of our operations so that they can seamlessly protect privacy throughout. And so I was delighted that it was passed, unanimously passed as an international standard in 2010. And then, as you know, in 2018, when the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, came into effect in the EU, it's privacy by design and privacy as the default are part of the law, which is amazing.
On privacy by design, and we are looking at data fiduciaries globally. What are the systems and processes they have to develop or tweak to be able to give privacy protection from design? If you can just sort of take us through from a fiduciary perspective.
So you need to have privacy people involved out front with the people who are developing whatever operation you have, a particular program or policy or whatever. If you have the privacy people involved right at the beginning at the data design stage, then they can exert their influence to say that, oh yes, so we're going to be collecting all this data. We have to ensure that privacy is the default setting, one of the critical pieces of privacy by design. How do we do that? So we have to have positive consent, for example, up front. People have to know how their data will be used. And then once we obtain that consent, we need to retain it in a way that if additional consent is required for a secondary use down the road, it will automatically pop up and say, go back to the data subject and get additional consent. It's so much of it involves transparency and consent with the individuals Privacy as the default basically takes the pressure off of individuals, and it says to them, no, you don't have to scour through the terms of service and all the legalese and the privacy policy to have your privacy protected. We give it to you automatically. It is embedded into our code, into our operations. We have designed this in parallel with the design of this program, whatever is involved, or policy. So as long as you have privacy people involved right at the outset, at the design stage of whatever you're doing, whatever program or whatever, then you can have it embedded into the code, and you can have transparency built in. You can ensure that you have privacy and data utility, because privacy by design is all about win-win. It's not the zero-sum model of either or, win-lose. You have to forget about what you want because you want privacy. No, it has to be privacy and security, privacy and data utility. And we've done this repeatedly. So these are some of the things we would do.
Some of the work on privacy by design, and what are the sort of differences from, let's say, a process which does not have privacy by design versus a process which has privacy by design? What's the sort of difference in terms of the increase in the privacy of users?
The difference is essentially, if you have processes in place, programs that don't have privacy by design, then it'll go along doing whatever it's doing, and then you will have data infractions, you will have data breaches, privacy infractions. All these will arise, and the only way in which they can be addressed is through regulatory compliance after the fact, once, hopefully, the data breach has come to the attention of the people who are running the programs. And then it has to be resolved after the fact with a ruling from the Privacy Commissioner, the Data Protection Authority. The problem is most data breaches and privacy infractions don't see the light of day. They're abounding, but nobody knows about it. So there's no opportunity to correct it. These are the enormous problems. And that's why the commissioners, when they voted in favor of privacy by design as an international standard, they said the majority of the privacy harms are not reaching us. They evade detection. We don't have the means of addressing it. That's why we've got to get in front of it instead of just being after the fact, always dealing with it through regulatory compliance. Once we learn about it, most of the time, we're not going to learn about the majority of the breaches and privacy infractions, and that's the problem.
Right, absolutely. In fact, the Indian government is also inspired by this concept, and Clause 22 of the Indian Data Protection Bill talks about privacy by design, that all data fiduciaries should have that. So absolutely, I think that's a great step forward. Moving on, you were Information and Privacy Commissioner, and now we're looking at the data protection regulators, right? In India, we're looking at a data protection authority, which would come once the data protection law is passed. So how important do you see the role of a data regulator? And how important is it for the regulator to make sure that privacy by design as a concept is implemented? And what are the ways that a DPA could do that?
It's so important to reach the privacy data protection regulators. It's absolutely critical, because if they have an understanding of privacy by design and how it can help them enhance their operations in dealing with the regulatory structure they have in place, they will embrace it. But they have to understand it. People have to have this explained to them. So if, Kazim, if ever you want me to speak to your regulators, I'm happy to do that as one former regulator to another. Because you see, if they understand that privacy by design will assist the work of the regulator, he or she is going to have their hands full. Believe me, there's so much that's going on. And if they understand that having a proactive system of preventing the privacy harms from arising, it will make their job as regulator much more effective, because then they can really focus on the problems that come to their attention that have to be addressed by their intervention. So having it, think of it as an assistant, a privacy assistant, which is what privacy by design is all about, to give you some breathing space, and also for you to be able to assure your public, the people who you work with and in your state, to assure them that you are doing everything you can to protect our privacy, which, as I said, forms the foundation of our freedom. You cannot have free and open societies without a solid foundation of privacy. And privacy is not about having something to hide. It drives me crazy when people say that. Privacy is all about control, personal control on the part of the individual, so that you decide how you wish to have your information used and to whom you wish to have it disclosed. That's all it means. I always say, look, privacy is not a religion. You want to give away your information? Be my guest, as long as you make the decision to do so.
And you spoke on privacy by design and that a process should be built in for safeguarding user privacy. One of the technologies that we've seen which caters to this is encryption, end-to-end encryption, right? Which is a foundation of privacy. And we have communication platforms, and now we're using end-to-end encryption across multiple communication platforms. But we're also seeing that governments globally, and we've seen that with the Five Eyes, that some of them are trying to look at backdoor access to data. Is backdoor encryption a sort of a threat to privacy by design? And is encryption, how much of an encryption, end-to-end encryption is privacy by design per se?
Encryption is amazing, as you said, Kazim. I mean, this will ensure the protection of your data and will also safeguard your ability to control the uses of your personal information and have it disclosed to whom you wish to have it shared with. End-to-end encryption is the best imaginable model because it means that literally it is encrypted from whoever sent it to you and back. End-to-end encryption, brilliant, absolutely wonderful. The problem has been that many governments want to break into the encryption. They want a backdoor, it's called, a crypto backdoor, that will enable them to break into the code and access the information in an unauthorized manner. And this is not new. Dating back to the Clipper chip, late 90s, when I was first commissioner, we fought this. And for a year, I remember the first debate globally, all around the world, everyone participated. And at the end of the year, everyone agreed this is a terrible idea to have a crypto backdoor that would enable unauthorized parties to gain access to your personal information. And it was just rejected. But it never ended there, unfortunately. It rears its ugly head again and again. In 2015, 15 of the world's brilliant cryptographers, data scientists all around the world, wrote a paper called Keys Under Doormats. They wanted to use that term to make it understandable to the general public that just as you may leave a key under the doormat so that your child can gain entry into their home if they lost their key, it will also allow the bad guys, the thieves, to gain entry into your home. And that was the analogy they used in the title of the paper, Keys Under Doormats, because they wanted to explain, well, it may allow law enforcement to break into the code, but the bad guys, all the hackers, etc., will all gain access as well. That's why this is a terrible idea. But it hasn't gone away. As you mentioned, the Five Eyes have been exploring this. Australia last year allowed a crypto backdoor in their operations, and the rest of us are fighting this very, very strongly. We have to fight this, and I applaud Apple. Several years ago in the United States, James Comey, who was the Attorney General at the time, fought Apple. They said, they arrested someone who had an Apple iPhone and they couldn't break into it because it was encrypted end to end. So they went to Apple and they said, break the code for us. And Apple said, we can't break the code. We don't have the ability to do that. And they said, but surely you can figure out how to do it. And they said, why would we do that? Our entire business model is based on end-to-end encryption, full and total privacy and security. And James Comey took Apple to court. Apple went to court and Apple won. James Comey pulled out. So I was delighted with that. Apple does a wonderful job again and again to protect privacy and security. But with end-to-end encryption, we have to uphold this and we have to fight crypto backdoors and other means of tracing the identity of people who may have started the initial email. No, we have to fight that very strongly.
And there is a legitimate state interest, right, in terms of regulating technology and also fighting crimes on the internet. There's a lot of child sexual material also being proliferated, as well as fake news, misinformation. So the state has legitimate interest and need to also regulate and to be able to pursue their law investigation activities. Now, on one hand, national security is critical, but then you have privacy by design and technologies such as end-to-end encryption that enable foolproof privacy. What is the way forward for the state as well as the citizens and the tech ecosystem to come forward and
we have to have both. It can never be one versus the other. And I've worked, during my 17 years as privacy commissioner, I worked with law enforcement all the time. And if law enforcement, if the police have a legitimate probable cause that a crime has been committed, they can go to the court and they can get a warrant. If they get a warrant, then that enables them to gain access to a lot of information that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to. So it's not that we're tying the hands of law enforcement. They have many means available to them. They just can't decide on their own. They're going to go in and grab whatever is encrypted and force people to open it up. No, you have to have probable cause. It has to be reasonable. The court has to address these issues. That's why we have a justice system in place. It's very important to respect the justice system and respect privacy. We can have both privacy and security. They go hand in hand, but that's what freedom is about. No one said freedom is easy, but it is everything. We have to pursue this. Both have to go hand in hand.
Absolutely. My next question, Anne, is around global privacy regimes. And we are looking at countries enacting privacy laws. India is at the cusp of a law. US, there are states which have enacted privacy laws. You have the EU GDPR and other countries also. And there is a greater need to also regulate technology. In your mind, what is, let's say, a common minimum standard which countries should abide by when it comes to safeguarding user privacy?
And you're so right. So many countries have been enacting new privacy laws. Actually, I've been dealing with Brazil lately extensively. They've just introduced a new law as well. And so the one point I try to make is that when we have these new laws in place, we have privacy and have some understanding of how privacy by design can actually be enacted in your operations to ensure that the legal structure you have in place is honored and respected. So you need to have a team. You need to have people who are aware of both the privacy and security issues, who can address these issues, who can talk to law enforcement and get law enforcement to truly understand the vital need to do this. And it has to be done very, very openly. I'll just give a very quick story. It's not directly related to this, but all the harms that can arise. Clearview AI was this company that wants to, they basically slurped 3.3 billion facial images off of social media, Facebook, etc. And they're now selling that to law enforcement all around the world. Here in Canada, that happened. And it turns out that a lot of law enforcement agencies are buying this from them, but they're buying it without the authorization of the chief of police. As soon as the chief of police learns about it, as we did in Toronto, we advised our chief of police, as soon as they learned about it, they shut it down. Because they said, we can't just take all these facial images without any notice or consent to the individuals. Plus, the false positive rate in facial images is extremely high, 81% as a minimum, incorrectly identifying the person as the person of interest when they're not, ruining their lives until they can clear their name. So I give that as an example because I worked with law enforcement to ensure that the chiefs of police were aware of it, and as soon as they learned about it, they shut it down. So we have to have a constant dialogue with law enforcement and with others so everyone can see that privacy and security, privacy and police can work together.
Thanks a lot. And I think we have time for one final question. So okay. My final question to you is, we are looking at, some countries having a central authority and an umbrella legislation to regulate data privacy, while there are other countries who are looking at, sectoral privacy regulations and a decentralized authority. So in your opinion, what is the best way forward, which you think is the most progressive?
I'm going to say both. Central authorities are useful because you might have a global, epidemic level breach and you need to have someone address it. But I personally love to engage companies and private sector entities on their own because we offer Privacy by Design certification now. And many companies have come forward to be certified to show their clients, their customers, the lengths they go to protect their privacy. And it works beautifully. It's the ultimate win-win because companies come back to me and they say, we're so happy we did this because it's actually benefiting us. It's giving us an advantage, a competitive advantage over the other guys. Plus, it enhances the quality of our information holdings. Our customers come to us because we give them full access to their data. And they let us know if some information we have on them is no longer accurate. It's dated. They give us much more accurate information, increases the quality. So win-win. Central authority, yes, but also complement that with private sector entities, companies doing it on their own. And that way they will deliver the strongest privacy possible.
Thank you so much, Anne, for this conversation. Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you, Kazim. The pleasure was mine.
And I hope we can keep talking, but thank you so much for this and hope you enjoyed watching this conversation. We will be back soon with more such discussions over the course of the coming weeks. So thank you so much to all our audience.
Thank you, Kazim. Until the next time.